Hey everyone, welcome back to the brewery. Today we have something super special for you. Today we're traveling to the heart of Europe, to the Czech Republic, the birthplace of Pilsner, a crisp, clean, and totally refreshing beer. The city of Prague isn't just famous for its awesome architecture and rich history, but also for its beer-making tradition. This style of beer is all about balance, a light malt sweetness, a nice hoppy bitterness that's not too strong, and a clean, dry finish. Every sip is an experience that brings together the best of natural ingredients. Now, some people might tell you that brewing a Pilsner at home is difficult, but don't worry. We're here to guide you every step of the way. They'll say it's a beer only for experienced brewers. But with a little practice and some effort, anyone can do it. And while it's true that Pilsner requires precision, don't let that scare you. The key is to follow the instructions and be careful with the details. With the right ingredients, the right tools, and a good amount of patience, you can absolutely brew a delicious Czech Pilsner in your own kitchen. Imagine the pride of serving a beer you made yourself. So, are you ready to roll up your sleeves and start brewing? Let's dive into this beer-making adventure and create something amazing together. Before we fire up our kettles, we need to talk about the ingredients. These are the essential parts that turn water into a delicious beer. At its heart, beer is a simple drink, made from just 4 basic ingredients, but each one plays a key role in how the final product turns out. Water, malt, hops, and yeast. Each one of these brings something unique to the beer. And for our Czech Pilsner, we'll be using Pilsner malt. This light-colored malt forms the backbone of our beer, giving the sugars that the yeast will turn into alcohol. It's super important for the body and flavor of the beer. We're looking for a clean, slightly sweet malt flavor. This flavor is the base that all the other flavors are built on. Saaz hops. This fancy hop, named after the Žatec region of the Czech Republic, is known for its spicy, floral, and slightly earthy aroma. It'll give our Pilsner that classic bitterness and smell. Hops don't just add bitterness, they also act as a natural preservative. Water. Good water is really important for good beer. The quality of the water can make or break a beer. Use filtered water to avoid any yucky flavors. The water should be pure and free of anything that could mess it up. Lager yeast. This is where the magic happens. Yeast is what makes fermentation happen, changing the sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Lager yeast does its work at cooler temperatures than ale yeast and makes a clean, crisp flavor, perfect for Pilsners. This slow fermentation process is key to what makes a Pilsner special. Now that we have our ingredients, let's talk tools. Having the right equipment is really important to make sure our brewing goes smoothly and turns out great. Brewing beer at home doesn't need a fancy setup. With just a few key things, you can start making your own craft beers. Here's what you'll need. First, a big pot. Large pot. This will be our boil kettle. It's where we'll mix and cook our ingredients. A 5-gallon pot is a good size to start with. Make sure it's big enough to avoid spills. Fermentation vessel. This is where our beer will ferment. This step is super important for developing those yummy flavors. A food-grade plastic bucket or a glass carboy will work. Both are great choices for fermentation. Airlock. This little device lets carbon dioxide escape during fermentation, while keeping oxygen out. This is really important to prevent our beer from getting contaminated. Bottles. We'll need bottles to store our finished beer. Brown glass bottles are best to protect the beer from light. Light can make the beer taste bad. Bottle capper. This handy tool makes sealing our bottles super easy. Make sure you have plenty of caps. Thermometer. Controlling the temperature is super important in brewing. It affects the fermentation and the final flavor. So a reliable thermometer is a must-have. A digital thermometer can be a good investment. Siphon. We'll use this to transfer our beer without disturbing the sediment at the bottom of the fermenter. This helps keep our beer nice and clear. Sanitizer. Cleanliness is key in brewing. Any contamination can ruin a whole batch. Sanitize everything that touches your beer. This includes your bottles, your siphon, and any other tools you use. Alright friends, let's start brewing. The first step is mashing. This is where we activate the enzymes in the malt to convert the starches into fermentable sugars. Think of it like making oatmeal. Heat your water. We'll need to heat our water to around 150 to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the sweet spot for the enzymes to do their work. Add the malt. Slowly add your crushed Pilsner malt to the water, stirring constantly to avoid clumps. This mix of water and grain is called the mash. Keep the temperature. Hold the mash at a consistent temperature for about 60 minutes. This allows the enzymes to fully convert the starches into sugar. Section 5. Lauterization, straining for clarity. Next, we need to separate the sugary liquid called wort from the used-up grain. This process is called lauterization. First, transfer to a lauter tun. If you have a lauter tun, transfer the mash to the tun. If not, you can use a large strainer lined with cheesecloth. Then, recirculate the wort. Slowly pour the wort back over the grain bed. This helps to clarify the wort and remove any leftover grain. Finally, rinse the grain. Rinse the grain bed with hot water to extract the remaining sugars. Section 6. Boil and add hops, adding bitterness and aroma. Now it's time to boil our wort. Boiling has several purposes. It sterilizes the wort, extracts the bitterness and aroma from the hops, and concentrates the sugars. First, bring it to a boil. Heat the wort until it's bubbling hard. Then add hops. We'll add our Saaz hops at different times during the boil. The first addition, at the start of the boil, provides bitterness. Later additions, closer to the end of the boil, contribute to the aroma. Finally, chill the wort. After boiling, we need to cool the wort down quickly to a temperature that's good for the yeast. You can use an immersion chiller or an ice bath. Section 7. Fermentation, where the magic happens. Now comes the really exciting part. Fermentation. This is where we introduce our yeast and let it do its magic, turning sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide. First, add the yeast. Once the wort has cooled down, add your lager yeast. Then, ferment at cool temperatures. Lager yeast ferments best at cooler temperatures, usually between 45 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. A basement or a dedicated fermentation chamber is ideal. Finally, monitor the fermentation. The fermentation process can take 1 to 2 weeks. You'll know it's done when the airlock stops bubbling. Section 8. Bottling and conditioning. Patience is a virtue. Our beer is almost ready. The final steps are bottling and conditioning, which allows the beer to carbonate and develop its final flavors. First, bottle the beer. Carefully transfer the beer to sanitized bottles, leaving about an inch of headspace. Next, add priming sugar. We'll add a small amount of sugar to each bottle. This will provide food for the yeast to produce carbonation. Finally, store and condition the bottles at room temperature for 2 to 3 weeks to allow the beer to carbonate. Chapter 9. Cheers to your Czech Pilsner. Congratulations everyone, you've brewed your own Czech Pilsner. Chill your bottles, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Remember, the first batch might not be perfect, but that's okay. Brewing beer is a journey, and every batch is a learning experience. So keep experimenting, keep learning, and most importantly, keep brewing.